Well, good Tuesday morning, Arizona, Colorado, worldwide and beyond. You've landed here on the Patriot Radio News Hour, and no, your ears are not playing tricks on me. This is Bryan joining Jason. We are backfilling for Joe today that has some things to do, so you're left and stuck with us. So we got a good show planned for you here this morning. Jason, what are we going to talk about today? It's not like there's a shortage of topics.
I got a couple things planned to talk about. I don't know. It's been a long time since I think you and I hosted this show. Joe is a busy man, owning and running a radio station and a gold and silver company, and being the holidays, so obviously personal. You can stack up your time. So Joe's taking care of some things that need to be taken care of. We're going to have the Front Range News Hour Monday through Thursday this week over here at KHNC 1360 AM. Myself and Bryan are going to be doing the Patriot Radio News Hour today and tomorrow. There'll be repeats of this show, or whichever shows Joe wants to repeat for Thursday and Friday there in Arizona, and we'll be repeating those shows obviously here in Colorado. But yeah, Bryan, it's been a while. I mean, our old partner Glenn, who's since went on to better things, used to do some of these morning shows, but now that responsibility falls to us, and I love getting on the air and talking to the Arizona fans.
Roger that. Just for you Arizona fans that are probably bathing in feet of sunshine, we've got a little bit of that white global warming powder that fell on us yesterday and overnight. We got clear skies today, a little chillier temperatures, but just kind of set things in perspective. Yep. Colorado, snow, Arizona, sun. I guess that's the way it's supposed to be.
I heard 7 degrees low today. That kind of where you're at, Bryan. I heard maybe tonight it gets down to 7.
About right. Yeah, we had 50s a couple of days last week, and leave it to Colorado. It is December, almost January, so that's to be expected. But hope everyone had a great Christmas. We got New Year's right around the corner, and the hope is that 2021 will be different than 2020, and I think it will be, hopefully in a positive direction, but that is yet to be determined as well.
Yeah, so today, the show that we do here in Colorado is a little different than the show that's in Arizona. We're more trying to kind of hit the social aspects of what happens when the economy sort of does its damage to the average Joe. What happens when a coronavirus shows up? What are the economic ramifications, or what are the reasons why the economics caused the economic crash that happened earlier this year? There's going to be another one coming probably next year. Joe likes to hit you with the numbers. Comes in on this morning show and gives you all kinds of numbers. That it comes from the Fed themselves, the government, unemployment numbers. And Bryan and I do some of that stuff too. I'm going to throw some numbers at you on the next segment. I'm going to talk sort of a situation, a very real-to-life type situation. I'm going to make a comparison. I'm going to have Ed and Ted. I'm going to talk about two guys, fictional, but they had the same situation, but they went a different path. And we're going to examine how gold and silver is such a good way to save your money, to save your time and effort. It is wealth insurance, like Joe has been saying for years. And we're going to talk about Ed and Ted, Bryan, in the next segment. We're going to talk about how we're in a debt money system, Bryan, and if you don't understand the debt money system, which we're not supposed to, it can eat you alive. And this year is eating more people alive than ever before.
What's interesting, Jason? I'm sitting there as you're talking. I'm thinking about how the Al Gore Leone, as I like to call him, and his climate hustle really inverse things. There's several charts in that movie that kind of reverse the order of things, that man-made activities are causing global warming, or boiling it down more technically, CO2 levels. And there's two charts that they shifted to make it the inverse of reality of global warming causing CO2 levels to rise when it's really the inverse. And here with this coronavirus, or pick your global catastrophe causing the financial woes, when the exact inverse is exactly what's going on.
Yes, exactly. I mean, when you start to understand these things, well, I think one of the reasons that people listen to this show for years and years, and then now we've had our short stint, we're coming up on 3 years in March for our show here in Colorado. You come to this show because you figured out that something's not right. You figured out that what you've been taught, or what maybe your parents or your friends, teachers, about money and the economy, what they taught you was something's not working. You know, that you're supposed to go to school and get good grades and go to college and find some career. But somewhere missing along the lines in the last 4 or 5 generations of Americans, there doesn't seem to be anybody teaching what to do with your money and how to take care of, especially that extra money that you have every paycheck. You know, if you have, $50, $200, $1,000 every payday, that's above your expenses, maybe even above, let's say you have investments, but you have this extra money, and you should save money. You got to be prepared for anything, emergencies or whatnot. Nobody really teaches you what to do with that. And when it comes to Wall Street, they don't really like gold and silver because it doesn't fatten their wallets. There's no way they can manipulate it the way they can with telling you to buy too many of one type of stock, and then it crashes. They're nowhere to be found after they told you to buy that stock. So I'm going to talk about debt money, Brian. It's going to be interesting. I'll put up this scenario of 2 guys from the year 2000 all the way to the year 2020, a similar situation, and we'll see what kind of results as I read through it, Brian.
Sounds like a plan, Stan. Coming up on our first break here, Patriot Radio News Hour. Jason and Bryan filling in for the boss man, Joe. Be back shortly after these important commercial breaks. Patriot Radio News Hour. 800-951-0592 is the number. You got your substitute host, Jason and Bryan, here today. Jason, let's get on with the show.
Yeah, I'm going to give a situation, a mock situation about 2 guys in a similar situation and what they decide to do with their money. So I'm going to call them Ed and Ted. We all know, listen to this station, most people have an idea. Some people buy gold because they know they should, but don't really get it. Sometimes you don't put down a scenario where it makes it very clear why we're getting gold and silver. I mean, we all know that the price goes up over time, but so does the stock market. You used to look at the stock market, it was, in the 80s, it was like 1,000 or 2,000 points, and it just kept building. But there's some fundamental differences as why gold is better, especially when we're talking savings. I always, on our show, we talk about whatever your savings are. If you're going to hold money in a bank or in cash for more than 2 years, especially, but I would say even in this environment, 6 months to a year, if you're going to hold cash, you might as well put it in gold and silver because it's going to protect the value. You never know when the market's going to have a big hole in the bottom of it, and then inflation could come in behind it when things really go in the wrong direction. The next crash will not be the same as 2008, the housing crisis. So I'm going to talk about 2 guys. In the year 2000, you have Ed and Ted, and both of them buy a house. They're both buying a house that's $200,000. So they got their 30-year mortgages. Everything about this situation is going to be similar. However, both of them don't really want to be in debt, even though it's a mortgage, which is not a big deal, but it is debt. How are they going to make this debt work for them? One guy doesn't want the debt, Ed, and he's decided every month he's going to put a little bit of money towards paying off the house. Trim some years off that house, and he won't have to have as much interest money, and he'll be better off than Ted because Ted's not going to put any extra money towards the principal. He's going to do something else with his money. So Ed gets his $200,000 loan and starts every month spending extra money to bring down the principal and have less of a mortgage. Ted has decided, well, I'm going to buy gold. What I'm going to do with that extra money, and Ed and Ted work the same job, have the same bills. They have the same amount of money, extra money every month to put towards either paying off the mortgage, or extra principal, or buying gold. Ted's going to go ahead and buy gold. So we got 2 different situations as far as what to do with that extra money. Ed's going to pay down the house. Ted's going to buy gold. In the year 2000, the average price of an ounce of gold for Ted was $275, give or take, a little higher, a little lower. 4 years later, as we're moving through this 30-year mortgage, remember, if you pay off the mortgage, 30-year mortgage is going to take till 2030. This scenario, we're going to only end up at 2020. In 2004, the average price of an ounce of gold is about $425. So a little more expensive for Ted to get those ounces of gold, but these guys are working their jobs and raising families like anybody else, and they're trying to find their way through this world and do the best they can for the families. And Ted's buying gold. In 2008, the average price that Ted was buying gold was around $850 an ounce. Obviously, certain times of the year, a little more expensive, a little cheaper. As we get to 2012, there was an average price of around $1,550 to $1,600 for an ounce of gold. It was, prices had spiked. Probably went a little too high. Than the guys that monkey with the markets. They were doing everything they could to bring this new normalcy. They dropped interest rates down to zero, trying to make everyone feel like we were going to recover from this, bailing out the banks, and gold spiked. And Ted was paying a little extra money there, about $1,600, $1,550 an ounce in that time frame. 2016 rolls around, ounce of gold is around $1,150. So we got into that area where the spike in gold came down and kind of got into the zone from 2013-ish to about 2019, early part of that year, where gold was really sitting around $1,250 an ounce for that time frame. And Ted bought a bunch of gold at that price point. Now here we are in 2020. Gold has been averaging around $1,900 an ounce, with a high of about $2,050 a few months ago. Here we got 20 years. Now Ed's been paying all these 20 years, Ed's been paying extra principal. And after 20 years of paying extra principal, Ed has paid off his house. That $200,000 mortgage is now zero. Ed has no savings. He hasn't been saving money, but he has no debt. He's sitting in a position where, I got my house paid off, mission accomplished. I might decide at this point, I might start saving some of that money now. I might start building for something new to do. So maybe I'll, whatever Ed wants to do, right? Ted still has $100,000 he owes on his house, making his monthly payments. And Ed's bragging about how he paid his house off, and I don't have to make that mortgage payment anymore. And Ted's kind of getting sick of Ed bragging about how he just paid his house off. And when gold was sitting about $2,000 an ounce about a month or two ago, 3 months ago, Ted decided, what? I've acquired 100 ounces of gold over these 20 years. I scraped and pushed, and an average price point for those 20 years is about $1,000 an ounce. From the year 2000, where it was $275 an ounce, to 2020, where you got to a high of about an average of $1,900 an ounce. In between those years, those are the price ranges of when he was just every month buying a little bit of gold. If it was $1,800 an ounce in 2011, he just bought an ounce. If it was $1,050, like in 2015, when gold went down to $1,050 for a short time, he bought it for $1,050. So he ended up with about 100 ounces of gold. And he had one choice when he went to sell his gold, because he decided, I'm going to pay off my mortgage too. I got 100 ounces of gold. I can sell it now for $2,000 per ounce. I've got $200,000 if I want to sell all 100 ounces. What Ted decided to do, he sold 50 ounces of gold. That's $100,000, paid off his mortgage, still has 50 ounces of gold or $100,000 in savings. So Bryan, Ted is sitting there with $100,000 in savings and paid off his mortgage, and Ed's got to be looking at Ted like, you have $100,000 and your house is paid off? This is what we are not told about in America or across the world. These central bankers have run all these countries across the world, and they don't want you to have assets. They don't want you to hold on to something that holds its value. Ed slaved away at trying to pay down debt and was running through the rat wheel trying to pay off the debt, which is a good thing. Who wants to have a mortgage if you get rid of it? But he didn't understand that if you're holding real assets, that you're going to have more value, especially after a 20-year span, Bryan. I mean, think about that scenario, right?
Yeah, you're right, Jason. It's either taught out of us or it's not taught at all. But some of those core principles of it's best not to have debt, but if you don't want to wait, I guess it boils down to if you don't want to wait to have a nicer house or a house period, and you go into that debt for the mortgage, we're told that paying that down is the primary goal. Which you're right, that is good. But what if you did? I forget who is who, but I guess what if you did what Ted did?
Ed paid off his mortgage, and Ted was the one that bought gold.
What if you did what Ted did and stuck with that? Didn't pay any extra principal on your monthly payment, your mortgage payment, and instead put it into real savings. And I'm sure there's arguments on the other side too, but that's an interesting scenario.
I think what needs to also be stressed here is that we are in a debt money system. Those that can service the largest amounts of debt can benefit from the system if they know where to put their money. It's a little bit of more of a risk, but there are guys out there like Trump, and other guys out there that use debt to their advantage. When you buy a house, there's nothing wrong with buying a house. Who's going to have $400,000 to buy a home? It's just people just don't have that kind of money. Having a mortgage is good, but if you don't have any other investments, if you have, depending on your job situation or what your economic situation is in your household, paying down your house may not be the best tool for you. And look at these. If you were buying gold in 2000 up to now, look at the difference of what could have happened over that 20 years. Now, that's the one thing that these guys were both doing is they used their mortgage as a way to better their lives. Because if they weren't buying a house, Bryan, they'd be paying rent somewhere. So at least in this situation, Ed's better off. He actually owns his house. He has some equity in a home. But wouldn't it be better if you had your house paid off and had $100,000 sitting on the side when you were done, which is what Ted did. And this is what I try to get people to understand, which is you have to take care of savings. You've got to pay yourself. There's lots of ways you can do savings. You can just put it in cash. But over 20 years, Bryan, the things that you could have bought with that $100,000 in 2000, you're not going to be buying that same amount of stuff in 2020, are you?
Nope. No, it's that analogy that regular listeners have heard time and time again of taking a $20 piece of paper, $20 note, and a $20 gold piece, and either traversing through time or passing it down to your children. And the purchasing power of that, or the reduced purchasing power that is of the diluted paper note, paper currency.
So Ted ends up with $100,000 in gold with this scenario, Bryan. So imagine if the listener that's listening to this kind of scenario right now, a lot of people want to be the guy that has a big pile of gold right now. There's a little bit of there's no patience with it. I know a lot of new customers that come in and they have a big chunk of money and like, I'm going to throw this whole thing at you and get started. And I'm fine with that. That's a great way to go. If you've got it, you're not going to need it. But some of these, some people come in, they throw that big amount and then they find themselves that they threw too much money at it. They're like, well, you know what? I had these other expenses come up. I didn't realize it. We don't want that. You need to keep your monthly expenses to the side. You got your bills, you got your mortgage, you got your rent. But I tell a lot of guys that are coming in, they don't really know how to start buying. Just buy it a little at a time. You got a big chunk. Let's say you close out a retirement account, a 401k or something. You got a big chunk. Bring us the big chunk. We'll take care of that. We'll make sure that you'll get the best price possible to buy in.
And don't worry. Sure that don't worry. Your accountant will call you crazy. Your accountant will tell you you're nuts for taking it out of the 401k.
Yeah, try cashing it up.
Both accountants.
That's right. Try cashing that 401k and see how much resistance you get. They want that money in the system. They don't want it in your control. They want it in the system's control. And when you're getting income, whatever your income is, retirement income, weekly, every 2 weeks your paycheck comes in. Put some of it in. If you got any ability to save money, you put a little bit of it in gold. You do it over the course of time. And, who knows what emergencies are being planned for America in the coming days. We're going to talk in the next few segments about, maybe a little coronavirus. I want to talk a little bit about mortgages and evictions, foreclosures. But emergencies are going to come. And, that rainy day is going to hit everybody. Sometimes it hits you every so many years. And gold and silver is the way to keep you from losing that house. I mean, can you imagine while Ed is paying down the house in 2000 Ken shows up and the housing crisis happens, and let's say Ed lost his job, he had no gold. But Ted, at 10 years, would have had a lot of gold saved up already. And he probably could have kept his house and saved himself. Ed, by paying down his mortgage all those years, just gave it back to the system and didn't really help him that much. I mean, I'm not telling people not to pay down their mortgage, but, you know, you got a 30-year mortgage, you're in, you know, you're in the debt money system with that mortgage, you're fine. Just make the payment. I mean, if you become a rich tycoon, of course, pay off all your debt, but leverage whatever assets you have and make sure you have a nice fat cushion for anything that this economic system is going to throw at you. And then, Bryan, they're throwing everything at us, aren't they? Any emergency that's gone on over the last 100 years is some ties to the Federal Reserve, doesn't it?
Well, and at various levels of government, it's interesting how they'll use the excuse of emergencies or crises to bend the rules or break the rules. Meanwhile, the rest of us are already having a hard time trying to make ends meet. So we're on our halftime break. Stay tuned. We'll be back in a couple of minutes. Jason and Bryan, Patriot Radio News Hour. Welcome back. Second half, Patriot Radio News Hour on this fine Tuesday, December 29th. Your co-host, Jason and Bryan. And yes, you'll have to wait until next year to listen to Joe again, right, Jason?
Yeah, we were closing down. Arizona's closing down after Wednesday, so we're doing the tomorrow show also. There'll be repeat shows Thursday and Friday, and then Joe will be back on the air on Monday, the 4th of January, to start the new year. We're doing a lot of work here at the radio station and trying to keep doing what we're doing. And 1360 KHNC is a great place to park yourself. If you're in Arizona and you want to hear what's going on around here, obviously our 10,000 watt station doesn't reach down there, but you can go to 1360khnc.com. I'll say it again. That's 1360khnc.com. You can stream the show that we're doing there. Our show comes on at 3 o'clock. Depending on what time of the year, we're off by 1 hour, or we're on with Arizona. So if you guys are on Mountain Time, you can catch us at 3 o'clock. If you're on Pacific Time, you'll be catching us at 2 o'clock your time for our show. But even if our show is not your fare, there's a lot of good stuff going on at KHNC, and you can tune in by going to 1360khnc.com, right, Bryan?
Yep, that's exactly right. And going for the national days today, Jason, is Still Need to Do Day, literally Still Need to Do Day. And as we were talking in that last segment about 401k and the crazy looks that I got the multiple times that I cashed out a 401k and put a significant part of it towards real savings, gold and silver. There's the metals plan that Patriot offers. And if that's something that you don't want to have to watch the prices and wonder if a particular special is what you want, call us 800-951-0592 and ask about the metals plan. Four shipments a year. You set the price at $100 minimum. You can pause it at any point in time if necessary, if something comes up. But if there was ever a savings plan, a real 401k, in my humble opinion, that Patriot Metals plan is a much better way to, I guess, achieve that goal of whether it's an ounce of gold for every year you've been alive or for every year you've been married. Tailor it to your own individual needs.
Yeah, and even though Joe is busy today, and I don't know the whole work schedules of everybody over there in Arizona. I know we got Arlene heading the crew over there. I know that Brooke is working. I think I don't know which ones are working or not. And we got the new girl, Brittany. Girl, woman. I don't want to insult anybody today, but we got the ladies over there that'll take your phone calls, answer some questions. The Mills program is an excellent way to do what Ted did, which is throw some money in every month. Every 4 times a year, you're going to get your delivery of your metals through the Metals program. Minimum of $100 per month to be in it. If you want to put $1,000 a month in, you want to put $10,000 a month in, whatever level you want to be at, we'll make sure you get the cheapest metals at that monthly amount that you put in. So 800-951-0592.
All right, Jason. Yeah, I even if you were to forego, let's just to say a $7 fancy coffee. I'm not going to give anybody a free plug here. A $7 fancy coffee 5 days a week. Right there's your $100 minimum for the metals plan. So just saying.
Exactly. And that's $7 coffee today. Right?
Might be more like $8 or $9.
Yeah, that'll be a $12 coffee here soon. I think we're going to talk a little bit now. Maybe we'll go through the next couple of segments. What's the one thing to talk about? There's really only one thing that everyone seems to be talking about. It's coronavirus. It's COVID-19. It's been pushed upon the world media in a way that nothing else ever has. I mean, I know when 9/11 happened, another false flag event, and we'll do a 9/11 show. I do that once a year, but I might be doing that one twice a year with the way people need to know about that. But COVID is the most misreported story in human history. They like to hit you with the word science. They're going to hit you with science. And anytime someone's talking seriously about their point of view or their opinion or whatever, the science says it. I see people that say the science to wear masks is solid, and then I see people say the science to not wear masks is solid, and it makes everyone confused, and people have to make decisions in their personal life, and it's craziness. And this is just like any other emergency that's been concocted, which is economically someone will benefit from this. There's a Ponzi scheme, the Federal Reserve, the Federal Reserve notes. That Ponzi scheme is showing a lot of weakness. And every so often you have an economic reset, and they're starting to say this in the media about a reset. There's going to be a reset. The last time we had a global monetary reset, it was called World War II. You could say it was about fascism. You could say it was about the Japanese and Pearl Harbor, and you can make all kinds of mentions. And I won't go too far into it, but through the leaders of that war, they fully admitted this was an economic war. That it wasn't just about Hitler; it was about changing the sales markets. Winston Churchill has quotes out of his own book and his own writings about how they forced this war upon Hitler. He's going to get this war whether he likes it or not. And they wanted Germany and other countries across the world to join this new economic system. We are heading into a further extension of this system, because there are more industrialized nations rising up like China that are joining this system. They have a central bank just like we do. And do you think the Chinese central bank is any different than the Fed or the IMF? Same guys run those banks. So what we got going on in 2020 is they have a term called cognitive dissonance. This is a thing that especially brutal dictators, but just any government will use to further an agenda, which is things will get better. They keep telling you how things are going to get better. The emergency will end. And while they're presenting this scenario to you that things are going to get better and the emergency will end, they're telling you that you have to do all kinds of things so that this situation will get better. Bryan, you remember flatten the curve, right, at the beginning of the year?
Yeah, little did we know that was flatten small businesses is what that translated to.
Exactly. What we've got going in this country is a massive, massive financial collapse. And when you're the guy, the Federal Reserve, who controls the economic system, who owns virtually all the debt in the entire nation, the entire world, for that matter, you can manipulate how the crash will happen. You can manipulate how severe the crash will be, how slow it could be, who's going to be the winners and the losers when this thing happens. Rockefeller, one of the original Federal Reserve bankers, one of those families, the J.P. Morgans, the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, the Warburgs, these families that famously, in the middle of the dark on Jekyll Island, concocted this idea. Rockefeller had a term, competition is a sin. And we're going to hit the break here. I'm going to talk a little bit about cognitive dissonance and COVID-19 and where we're headed with foreclosures and evictions and how bad this thing can be and if it's being timed out.
Welcome back. Patriot Radio News Hour, tag team in this today. Jason and Bryan, your hosts. Yeah, I guess you could say it takes two of us to backfill the big man, Joe. Joe will return next year. Jason, we're looking at spot prices right now. Gold's at 1878, silver's at 26, and I hate it when that happened. I think someone turned on the microwave. I forgot what I was going to say next, but go ahead.
That's okay.
I know what it was. It's interesting, all these pharmaceutical companies and all their gains and they're part in all this coronavirus. Interesting how that's helping Wall Street and doing nothing for Main Street right now. That's what it was. Sorry.
Yeah, well, no, in the pharmaceutical industry, some of these big agencies, these big conglomerates, these little clubs, these groups. You know, how many government agencies do we have now that shouldn't exist? Yeah, they operate the debt money system very well. You know, when you're given a privileged seat, one of the big boy table seats at the debt money system, you can use that debt money system against your smaller competition, and that's why we have these out of control, massive corporations that we have. Because not that they weren't successful, maybe they might have been successful if we didn't have the Fed, but because the Fed runs our government, or the government does the bidding of these masters, it's just going to get worse and worse. You know, there's going to be lords and peasants. There's going to be those that have title of land and assets, and there's going to be people that are going to work 7 days a week for food and shelter. The business class, the middle class will no longer exist. It happened to the Roman Empire. It created what was called the Dark Ages, which went on for centuries, and we're very quickly headed towards that in this world. One thing I wanted to talk about is the eviction crisis that's on our doorstep here. On January 1st, the CDC's mandate that if you qualified, you don't have to pay your rent is coming to an end on January 1st. Now, different states and different...
Think about what you just said, Jason. Think about what you just said. The CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, bureaucracy set that mandate. What is anything wrong with this picture?
Well, and you have the FHA. They have mortgage forbearance, which I'll cover here in a moment. But with this, hey, you don't have to pay the rent because you can't work or you lost your job or whatever it is. Obviously, if you're the owner, the landlord, this is horrible for you too. Not only is the people that can't pay the rent not paying the rent, this has been going on for most of the year, but you have to come up with your mortgage payment if you're, or you have to come up with the expense of fixing the house and keeping it up for the renter and not getting anything for it. Now, I'm not going to cry about the landlord or the renter. I just want to examine what's happening, which is in this state in Colorado. Our dummy governor, Jared Polis, the clown that guy is, he doesn't make any decisions like any of our elected leaders. They don't make the decisions. Somebody else is doing that for them. There's somebody else doing that. And he pushed, in Colorado, we had the same thing with renters, and he pushed, its date to end was in December, and he pushed it out another month. It's interesting how Colorado, and then these are other states, they're all pushing it to January, to where this rent, and now if you don't understand what we're talking about, if you haven't heard about it, the rent doesn't go away. It just adds up into a big pile, and you're supposed to try to pay it as best you can. There's $70 billion in rent owed through this type of program now in this country. If evictions happen like they're going to happen on a massive nationwide situation, there could be up to 20 million people evicted starting in January and bleeding into February and March. The average person that's pushing their rent back owes between $3,500 to $4,000. So some people are owing up to $10,000. Some people are a little lower than that. This is a situation this is that cognitive dissonance I talked about. You come up with a situation that makes things seem like they're going to be okay. Hey, just pay that rent later. And then with the FHA, the Fannie and Freddie, loans, here's somebody being picked out to be a winner. They mortgage forbearance, you can sign up for this and for 2 months, then maybe for 4 months, and you just keep signing up for it for up to a year starting in March 1st of 2020. You don't have to pay a mortgage. And even though you're thinking, well, it's probably going to be these small guys, I'll bet you right now that a lot of these big mortgage, these big property companies are the ones taking advantage of this. And while the small small landlord out there trying to have a few rental properties to pay off for him, it's not working out for him. You got someone renting in your basement, it ain't working out for you either. But it's probably going to work out really big for these big mortgage holders, Brian. And at the end of February, the mortgage forbearance comes to an end, and they're talking about pushing that a little further. They'll make this thing push to the point that they want it to push to, and then there'll be one gigantic timed event. And it's musical chairs, Brian. Who's not going to have a seat when this thing falls, right?
Well, and it's pressure. I forget who says that. It's pressure from above, pressure from below, pressure from the sides. They talk about the $600 stimulus check. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Congress creators are thinking, oh, I wonder if people's $600 about ready to run out, and having no clue of the rest of this country having to pay for things or pay for their own way. Now they're talking about a $2,000 stimulus check. What a perfect path to the mentality or the mindset of we need UBI, universal basic income. I can't help. That's not the only thing going on, but that's just one more of these multifaceted pressure points, in my opinion.
Yeah, the pressure from below is usually considered the problem. The pressure from above is usually considered a solution, and it always points towards government as the solution. Hey, here's the answer, but who's going to pay for it? The government will take care of it. It's always the government because, hey, if I was a central banker who basically told the government what to do and when to do it, especially financially, you're gonna leverage this thing in a very specific direction. And it's been going on for 107 years, Brian. Next year will be 108, and I don't see an end to it. And economically, Brian, the way to be a little bit out of this thing is to hold it in gold. Hold it in gold and silver. 878-951-0592. Gold and silver. We got one more segment, right, Brian?
Right, you're on Central Banker. Be right back. Final segment, Patriot Radio News Hour on this Tuesday, December 29th. Your co-host, Jason and Bryan, temporarily standing in for the boss man, Joe Jaquit. Toll free, our number is 800-951-0592 on the website, allamericangold.com. I just got a quick quote that I think is very applicable here, Jason, from Thomas Jefferson, 1785. I think all the world would gain by setting commerce at perfect liberty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
quite the contrary to what we've been witnessing and what everybody's feeling in this current day and age.
Yeah, Thomas Jefferson wanted to have an amendment to the Constitution when it was originally written to take from the federal government the power to borrow money. Very important. If he could have, this was a document that was born with some, people had to make those 13 colonies. There was a little give and take there, and so Thomas Jefferson wasn't able to put that in there. Now, if the power to borrow money was stricken from the federal government, all they would simply do is be able to print the money themselves. They wouldn't be able to borrow it. If this is something that you listeners don't understand or haven't heard before, but all the money that the Federal Reserve makes is at interest. It's borrowed into existence. And Thomas Jefferson knew that didn't have to happen. There was a way that the government can have gold and silver coin for money, and at the least of which it can print that money itself and not have to borrow it into existence. Bryan, even if we had inflation and things going on because the government was printing too much money, it'd be better if they printed too much money and they didn't have to pay interest on it, like the 27 trillion plus that we're at now, right?
Well, that's right. What you're talking about is controlling having a little more control over the money supply, right?
Yeah, the citizens of this country, if the Treasury was printing the money, we would have control over our Congress and Senate and the President. We would have control over the government. The citizens of this country do not have any control over this government anymore. In 1913, when the Federal Reserve was put into place, it took one generation. By 1933, and the citizens lost complete control over the Congress and the Senate. Those people started being elected at a higher percentage year after year, serving the bankers and serving financial interests instead of serving the people that they're supposed to represent. Because who gets them reelected? That's who politicians serve. It's actually a kind of a perfect job. The politicians are actually doing a really good job nowadays. They are serving those that keep them in power, which is the banking interests. The money, the lobbyists that big money that comes in that keeps these Congress people and these senators in power. They do what the money tells them to do. If the Treasury were printing the money, and let's just say they started printing too much money because they were giving too many favors to too many, let's just say California and New York, people in this country would start voting those people out because things would be going bad, and the people in Congress would, oh my gosh, look, they're voting us out. Now we got to change things. The citizens don't like it because the financial interest would not have that power. It would be the Congress controlling the money, and when the Congress made a mistake, they would have to change the way they control the money. Right now, they can make all the mistakes in the world, Bryan, because the money interests want them to make that mistake. And so they have no interest in doing what the people want them to do, Bryan.
And so literally, it's the best politicians that money can buy. No longer an exaggeration. And who knows how long it's been that way. The best politicians that money can buy.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't have complete control at the beginning. By 1933, they declared this country, FDR, declared this country bankrupt. The War Powers Act was signed. Gold was confiscated, and the government does not exist in the way that the Constitution says. So, hey, everybody, we're getting ready to the end of the show.